Hey, everybody. David Hahn from Ballistic Ventures. Thank you all for joining this morning. And we have a fantastic panel of folks. So this is a series that we're working together with all of our portfolio companies. And this month, ArmorCode is taking the lead on that. And just at this point, I'm going to introduce you to Karthik, who is going to be both our moderator and our ArmorCode person who's going to help us through. So Karthik is the Chief Security and Trust Officer at ArmorCode. And so they focus on application security posture management, also known as ASPM. ArmorCode empowers organizations to streamline security operations, improve application security, and effectively manage risks today. All right, I think I read that properly, Karthik, because that sounds really cool. So, Karthik, I'm going to turn it over to you. Let you take care of our wonderful panel.
Absolutely. Thank you, David, and thank you, Ballistic, for this opportunity for us to facilitate today's session. Again, as David said, I'm glad to be here. I know a lot of you are on the webinar today, and we're going to have this thing recorded as well, so it should be available for somebody who might have missed along the way. So, first of all, fantastic. Good morning to all of you, and I see Roger joining as well from Ballistic. Thank you, Roger. Appreciate this opportunity. Right, my name is Karthik Swarnam, as David had said. I have been in the security industry for about 30 years. I spent about 12 years in consulting, and then I've been a chief security officer, operator roles for large companies like TransUnion and DirecTV and AT&T and Kroger's of the world. So I spent about 16 years as being an operator, and since then I have transitioned in my third phase to a product technologies provider, and here I am at ArmorCode, right? At ArmorCode, I'm responsible for securing our program, and our program is very AI centric. And how do we manage as the world embraces AI? So we have security posture management is primarily what I would say that includes application security posture management, ASPM, as well as risk-based vulnerability management. Our premise is we want to shift away from managing vulnerabilities and findings and deficiencies and shortcomings, and moving and shifting from that to managing risk as an organization, which helps us be more deliberate about how we elevate the security posture at an organization. So managing risk, which is fed by all your findings and vulnerabilities and millions of them, kind of helps us move the program into and get to your security posture at an expected level, defined by a tolerance level, right? So we are a full stack security posture management capability that we drive towards. That's ArmorCode, and it's been a great journey up until now, and glad to talk more about it another time. Today's focus for us is, as we keep hearing artificial intelligence, and primarily speaking generative AI, in the last 18 months or last 24 months, we have seen the trough has gone up, right? So quite a bit of adoption in terms of generative AI in the enterprises. Right. As we talk about that, and as the enterprises embrace the generative AI train, what are the security challenges? How are organizations handling the security challenges? And what methods that we need to be able to adopt? Obviously we need to go above and beyond the traditional ways of, traditional conventional way of approaching security, as we start to bring in AI and generative AI into our business environment, right? That is the set and the context for today's conversation. So how are we going to manage security and manage security from a risk-centric based approach as your traditional environment keeps growing, and we complement that with generative AI capabilities, right? That said, I have fantastic set of folks with me. I'll go ahead, and I will, my panelists for today. I'll start with Paulo. Paulo is head of application security at Motley Fool. So I'm glad to have you, Paulo, for the conversation today.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Karthik.
Thank you. And next is 𝗙𝗵 Khanna. 𝗙𝗵 is from NetApp. He is VP of SRE, DevOps, and Cloud Product Security at NetApp, right? And as you know, NetApp is network appliances, and they do a lot of stuff in the technology space. So thank you for joining us, 𝗙𝗵, and sharing your perspectives.
Glad to be here.
And third is Mithun Rajur, Global Head of Application Security and Infrastructure Security at S&P Global, Standards and Poor's Index. Everybody knows and everybody's familiar with it. Probably they're driving their portfolio through that. So glad to have you, Mithun, you share your thoughts and how your company and organization, embraces and adopts this. Thank you, Mithun.
Yeah. Thank you, Karthik, and thank you, Ballistic, for having me. So it's a great opportunity.
Right. With that said, before I dive into our questions, I have a few questions I personally are eager to ask these panelists and have a good, healthy conversation. And the primary thing that you need to think about is obviously we'll talk about lots of concepts. We will kind of, demystify some of those theories that are out there. But that's one. But the primary objective is to be able to kind of get down to an actionable item, right? Day in, day out, we're all practitioners. So what do we do differently tomorrow, next week, and next month and next year, right? So beyond that, it's hard to say anything. But so it needs to be our conversation between the three panelists that I have are going to be very focused on what's actionable and how can we go and do it. Incremental benefits, things like that, right? Before we dive into those specific questions that I have built up, I also want to remind you of two things, right? If you have any questions, just put them on the chat and we'll get to it towards the end of it, right? Any questions, conversations that you need to have, we're happy to take it in that direction, right? So we will reserve some time in this conversation to have and address those things as well, right? The second thing is, before we get started, love to get a pulse.
850.
Yeah. So before we get even started, I'd love to get a pulse check from you all in terms of what is your organization's
What do you want?
challenge?
Jacob, they want you to take over.
Yeah. So apologies. So can you what is your organization's biggest challenge in adopting AI centric risks? Right, AI related risk. So this is a poll. Jeremy can start that poll, and love to get a pulse check from you all as your attendees, so that we know where we are in terms where the organizations are in terms of their journey, and then we'll dive into those questions. So we got about 18 people, participating in it up until now. We'll give it a few more seconds. So if you haven't punched in, please punch in. This is obviously anonymous, right? And will give us a flavor of where things are, and all your peers can also understand, where individual organizations are in their journey and what some of those challenges, and we all can help each other as co-practitioners and peers in the industry. All right, let's spend another 5 seconds and then we will wrap it up. So if you have any difficulty, that's okay. But if you can punch it in, please do so. All right. Anyone coming in last? Please do. All right. So I think I could probably do this, Jeremy, right? Yeah, great. Thank you, Jeremy. So if all of you can see, let me see if I'm unmuted. Yes, I am. So all of you can see the poll. I'm assuming you can, right? The results. So it's very interesting, right? I think I picked two things out of this thing. Limited visibility into AI-driven vulnerabilities seems to be one of the top ones. Makes sense, right? It's new age, new day. It's kind of interesting. The budget and resource constraints is not a bigger challenge for a lot of companies. So that sounds, I guess, if you throw in the AI word into the mix, you could ride that wave to get some budget even for your traditional security challenges that you face with, which is what I have. I have noticed it as well. Before I took this transition, it was one of those things. AI related programs are better funded. Obviously, there's a return on investment everybody's looking to achieve as well. And the difficulty integrating AI into your existing security risk management programs. That's about 36% as well, right? That kind of comes in number two. This is kind of validates what I have personally seen as well, right? It's limited visibility into what are these AI related risks we're talking about, and can AI program be retrofitted can our traditional program handle this AI related, and how do we complement and how do we embrace that into it rather than creating two separate tracks, right? And you don't want to have multiple tracks, and you're going to try to converge all of it again later into single dashboard, single pane of glass, and we keep talking about all of this stuff, right? So this is actually interesting, and I'm glad to at least see budget or resource constraint is not a bigger deal in this kind of a scenarios, right? So let me stop sharing this and let's dive into the questions, right? First, I would like to start with one of the open questions, basically, right? How has AI reshaped the cybersecurity landscape? How is AI coming into the picture? Either you're adopting AI for your security programs, or AI is adding challenges to your security programs. So I'd love to understand how that has reshaped, your organization's landscape as you deal with deal with AI, right? I'll start with Paulo. You can speak from your personal experience as well as your enterprise's perspective, Paulo.
Yeah, absolutely. So AI hasn't shaped it that much yet. The tools that we have been using have gotten AI capabilities, and we're able to do a smidge more in the time that we have, right? We're able to filter, we're able to find things, we're able to like create remediation scripts much more easily. But for me, the key unlock is when we're able to do things that we were never able to do before. And that's what I'm looking for, right? So imagine, for example, like vulnerability management, ArmorCode. What if I was able to talk to ArmorCode, and as I'm telling ArmorCode, here are my exceptions, here's what I care about, here's my risk, then ArmorCode could apply that to all the vulnerabilities and all the security findings that we have. That would be hugely beneficial. And that's the kind of thing that I'm looking for in our purchases right now.
Okay, so leveraging prompting capabilities out of this AI framework to be able to, kind of shift through and say, where can I find the needle in this haystack of vulnerabilities? It sounds like, kind of how do you optimize and create efficacy in terms of your workflow management is what I kind of translate that into, right? Thank you, Paulo. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I might add to that, like right now, it's a lot of filtering, right? Like, I might tell ArmorCode, this is what I care about, but it's a very like static type of query that I need to provide it with. And I think that can be more dynamic with the application of Gen AI.
So AI kind of provides us the platform for us to be able to go more dynamic. Fantastic, right? Thank you. Hey, Dheeraj, in your experience from an application security perspective, as you're talking about operations and cloud, how do you see this thing that has shaped your security approach by embracing AI? I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I think, thank you for having me firstly. I think in our world, I would categorize that into the advantages of using AI and managing cybersecurity landscape for us is multiple folds. First area, what we've seen value is a concept called as enhanced threat detection. So we currently started using ML ops, AI ML ops models, where we have low-level programming languages like C++ with with complicated memory buffers and management of low-level devices. So these are things that are not easy to catch if we allow humans to do that. So that is creating much bigger value for us in using AI ML ops tools to get enhanced threat detection. In line with that, we also allow these models and AI tools are allowing us to get real-time analysis for attacks, which we can handle, address, and act on it proactively than reactively. So I think real-time analysis, predictive analysis, automation is adding a lot of value. The AI tools are adding a lot of value. Now, the outcome of that is that we can actually have faster containment and we can have much richer investigation of these issues, with tools which are much better automated than humans. So there's value in that. I think the second part, which is also we should not forget, is the concerns of it. The concerns of using cybersecurity and AI tools in cybersecurity is areas that it's a very young field. So knowledge gap, skill set gap, accuracy gap like data bias and explainability come into play. So we have to actually marry the good and the bad of the AI tools and make sure that we customize these to our for our needs to the best of our ability. Karthik, you're muted.
Yeah. So I think predictive analytics and enhanced threat detection are a couple of things that I kind of stood out for me when you kind of said that, right? But also I think you are shining a light on one thing, data bias, right? We don't want to get into this bias mode because, in always in security, we talk about there's always a victim zero, right? Or victim one, right? And you may have said that, hey, this is not an issue till it becomes an issue, and then all of a sudden you go there, right? So I think we have, security tools and capabilities have shifted from signature-centric approaches into behavior-centric approaches, right? Generally speaking, and as we migrate from behavior-centric approaches to learning system-based approaches, right? I learn and I adjust my behavior, which is what LLMs and AI capabilities would yield as. I think we need to still keep in mind in the back of our mind the bias challenges that may come into picture, right? So Thank you, 𝗷𝗿, for that. Moving on to Mithun, S&P, you deal with data all the time, every time, and you probably have, extremely low tolerance or from a latency perspective, right? And in that kind of such an environment, how do you leverage AI to help you with security? Or, on the contrary, what is AI adding into your challenging security landscape as well?
Yeah, I think, firstly, let me explain what S&P as a company uses AI for, right? Like, I think we use it for many different use cases. I think 𝗙𝗵 has pretty much quoted a couple of them, like predictive analysis, data intelligence, data correlation, data gathering, and things like that. But the services that we provide our customers are pretty important over here. And trying to stitch that with the usage of automation and intelligence through AI capabilities is going to help us with faster automation and power to markets faster. So that's from a business applications perspective. The next thing we use AI is for cyber, right? Like obviously for cyber, we use it for algorithmic detections, finding anomalies, finding the unknowns. You name it, and we have a lot of attack vectors which AI can help us correlate faster, and that's what we use from a cyber perspective. Now the third one is we pretty much use the AI capability to secure AI, right? Obviously, how do we secure AI is another big topic, like because we talk about employees, we talk about applications, but how do we secure AI? In the third component, we adopt, industry framework methodologies to protect our AI ecosystem.
No, that's fantastic. So I think you're talking about, like, again, you're kind of hitting on predictive analytics, both from a security risk perspective as well as from your own business perspective, right? So that's kind of an interesting thing, right? So I'd like to want to add on to it or follow on to it, right? What are some of the specific techniques that you have deployed as you talk about, vulnerability landscape itself, primarily speaking, in, like our specific things that you can share some light on, Mithun? Or
Yeah. So I think from a techniques perspective, let's talk first about securing the AI ecosystem, right? Like obviously the industry is still evolving. It's not set in stone. We have some references with NIST and Gartner. If you look at Gartner, you go to the AI TRISM, which talks about like content anomaly detection, data protection, application security, and then adversarial resistance. So those are like techniques that we are in the journey of implementing it to ensure that like data and AI are protected with each other. And correlation to that is, the concept of the AI firewalls, just like traditional web application firewalls and API firewalls that we have, like bringing the AI firewalls into the ecosystem where we can stitch and protect the AI from number of cyber threats to exploit the AI itself. So, quote unquote, like I think, we're working on the AI risk and security governance framework. But I can go on, but like I think these are pretty much at a high level.
So the frameworks are maturing, and we do have some frameworks to guide us through, right? And I think a lot of companies and enterprises should start to embrace some level of framework. I can bring some method to the madness, right? And obviously, as it evolves, you can start to adopt it, right? So it's fantastic. Thank you. Shifting over to Paulo, as someone you're leading application security across Motley Fool, right? How do you balance innovation with the need for risk management, and what are some of the building blocks that you have in your risk matter when we talk about risk-centric cybersecurity program, right? What are some of the building blocks that you've been deploying?
Yeah, it's such an important question. I'm gonna voice also the need for AI firewalls, right? As we have so many other attack vectors that we need to be assured of. OS top 10, right? We had the top 10 for so long, and now there's an OS top 10 for LLMs, right? Things like prompt injection, model, hijacking, and things like that. We need to let developers know that these are real risks that they run whenever they integrate LLMs into their applications. And we need to teach them that, here's how you secure these things. As a security team, it's really important for us to establish these patterns, these security patterns, so that if we detect someone is using an LLM or their APIs, then they just establish these patterns from the get-go. And there's no trying to understand if they're doing it or not. We just automatically apply those guardrails for them. I will also say that there's, to add to Mithun's answer, we need to have a complete inventory of where all our data is going, right? You can imagine we have so many LLM providers nowadays, right? DeepSeek is a new one. How do we know where our data is going? And are we sending them our most private and important data, right? We need to have some sort of DLP to detect when something goes to a provider that we haven't approved of. So those are some ideas that we've been battling with in our organization.
No, I appreciate that. I think knowing where your data is and what's going on again translates back into risk. And risk is not just vulnerabilities. The risk is much broader than that, right? And I think one of the things to think about also, kind of, if I want to add on to you, Paulo, is are you challenging your existing traditional development methods and tools, and are they fit for the AI train that's coming across, right? So if you talk about DevSecOps, right, is your SCA and SAST and DAS tools, are they ready to pick up automated AI generated code related deficiencies, right? Again, training that and bias, how much of bias is being taken into consideration, so that somebody might say, well, I ignore this thing even though I'm going to inject maliciously, right? Is your ability to not only do that finding and getting into the CI/CD pipeline and your development lifecycle, are you injecting certain gates, and is your tools able to, inject certain gates and be able to control that aspects of it, right? Is your tool that provides you visibility is able able to provide visibility across these modern set of development lifecycle. And primarily in that space, I think it's much more, faster time to market, right? And companies. I know, Mithun, you can probably talk about it, right? Release cycles, right? It's not one a week, it's not one a day, it's multiple times a day. And I think, Dheeraj, I think you guys do the same thing at NetApp, right? So if you want to talk about, how is this speed to market driving to change your security tooling infrastructure so that you're keeping up with it, right? So, I think with the faster change, not only change, it's also faster time to market. I mean, release cycles and things like that when you talk about AppSec, right?
Yeah, I mean, so our tools do have some AI capabilities that are built into them. I'm thinking of tools like SaaS that are able to tell you whether something truly is something that you should be concerned about, or is it more of a false positive? That's a new capability that I've seen with this newer generation tools. They're able to go beyond just like, here's your error, right? And I find that hugely helpful. So being able to embed those things and not being such the problem that application security teams have been getting is that we just tend to send everything to our development teams. Right? And that's not helpful because they tune out and they don't respond to your issues. And what we really want is to be really targeted so that when we do send it, we're sending what we think is truly a risk. So these tools are sort of helping in that regard. Same thing can be said of SCA, right? Because now we have tools that will sort of like try to triage and see if it's actually in the callable path and not something that's more of a phantom issue. So
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Shifting over to you, Dheeraj, right? Can you share some things that, you have products, you have software runs your business, right? When you talk about DevOps and cloud security, what are some of the building blocks that you have in your security risk management security program that is fit for tomorrow?
I think over a period of time, what we've started evolving is that in any fast-moving agile organization, the fundamentals of the policy monitoring education frameworks are the most important part. And by that, what I mean is making sure that we are educating unauthorized use, we are monitoring, we have security controls which actually, limit use of unauthorized controls. And the second part with the frameworks is creating frameworks which are SDLC frameworks. That means that we are actually shifting security to the left. We're implementing DevSecOps models, use of more tools. It can be SCA, SAST, IST, DAS tools, VM tools, CSPM. In the world of security, there's this spaghetti of acronyms that has come up. So the idea is to again be more proactive and catch these problems before they become potential outages or issues in our production. And how do you do that is making sure that all our non-production SDLC frameworks are very solid. So what we have started doing is ensuring that we have very solid security gates that if a developer goes from developer into integration to performance to sandbox to stage and to production across this multiple life cycle of how the code graduates, there are gates which allow us to create a pass-fail criteria. And so that becomes very binary, it becomes very data-driven, and it becomes very easy to educate the developers that this is why your code is not moving from one environment to the other because you're not passing a certain quality security requirements. So there are those conversations. And I think the good part is most of the development organizations are very security-minded. It's just that they need to see very clear metric-driven dashboards. And in the world of product security, our job is to provide and make that job much easier for them. I use this analogy that like a developer has two interesting worlds to solve. They are building features, they have a timeline for that, and then they also want to make sure that the features are secure. So a life of a product security champion or the job of a product security champion is to make sure that we become enablers, not enforcers in their path, and we give them at least 70% cooked food, so that they can actually put the remaining 30% and make their life easier.
Okay. So what if that's a fantastic way of thinking about it, right? I think the developers have two jobs. One is to make sure that they're releasing their product, and two, they make sure that they are secure, right? So I don't think so we have any disagreement from them, right? But it's sometimes it becomes as a conflicting priorities, and I agree with the philosophy of shifting left, right? It's not just shifting left, saying that, okay, go build everything in the left, right? And also there is this fatigueness of a lot of tools, right? Unfortunately, people say, "Oh, I got to rationalize tools," right? I think we're getting to a point. Yes, you need to rationalize the tools that doesn't work for you. That doesn't mean we're not saying no tools, right? So to your point about giving visibility and moving that left and empowering them into the platform, so that they understand, are they fixing what matters and not chasing everything, right? It's not first in, first out. It's about, like, what's impactful, right? So impact based approaches into security comes into play, right? And I think that kind of stems from having a visibility. Visibility is going to be key to this business, right?
Correct.
Good. So Mithun, shifting over to you, I think there's a lot of terms out there, right? CSPM, DSPM, ASPM, ISPM, and then CTEM and BAS, and I think the security guys have gone to a point of creating acronym soups quite a bit, right? I don't want to get us into that rat hole of talking about the soup, an acronym soup, right? But rather, what I want to know is, what do you look for in a solution when you're looking for a security solution, and what should be a security solution start to think about, right? Again, where I'm going with this thing is, we used to talk about best of breed, and then we talked about point solutions, and I have my own reservations, and now we're moving down into the concept of platform-centric approaches. Where do you think your school of thought is, and how do you think this industry should evolve?
Yeah, I think acronyms and soup of acronyms will keep coming in. I think the primary fundamental what an information security personnel should think about is CIA triads. Like, we keep it very simple. You detect the anomalies, you detect the vulnerabilities, and how do that detection translate into an effort into remediation. So I categorize all of these as detect and remediate, and then you have protect. So obviously, developers can't lift out the mountains for everything. So what do you got to do when the developers are still trying to do a crawl, walk, run approach? How do you protect the organization and the corporations from these adversaries and attack vectors that we have in place? So protect capability matters. And last but not the least, if detect and protect, like both try to have some kind of loopholes, how do you respond to these capabilities?
Mm-hmm.
So what are your compensating controls for each of attack vectors and vulnerabilities and risks that we have within the organization? So I'll try to keep it simple. If I've given an opportunity to design an information security program, how would my detect capabilities look like? How would my protect capabilities look like? And how would my respond capabilities look like? Because that is how you can partner with risk assurance entities, and so that the business prioritizes cyber and they try to fund them.
Fantastic. I think sounds like Dheeraj, you were kind of nodding there, so it sounds like you have a point of view to add on.
I think, yeah, to make this more interesting and exciting, in the name of acronyms, there are two new acronyms that are evolving, which is called CTEM, which is Cyber Threat Emulation, and BAS, which is Business Activity Simulation. So, to your point,
I thought there was BAS, we're using BAS for multiple things, right? Breach attack simulation.
Yes.
Yeah, breach and attack simulation.
Or business activity.
Yeah.
Again,
Maybe
it depends on who looks
Yeah.
at it and how do you look at it. But
Yeah.
the idea is, I think barring the acronym, soup, I think the most important part, what Mithun said, is ability to proactively detect, which is what CTEM does.
Yeah.
You know, ability to simulate potential attacks which may or may not have happened, but preparing for them is very important. And then the ability to create policies, processes, and frameworks how to act on them, because a lot of times there's this ignorance or lack of knowledge or lack of a framework which does not know how to respond to an attack, both, you know, technically, process wise, legally. So I think having that in your organization is a very powerful tool, and more importantly, thinking about that to create those processes is extremely important.
Right. No, understood. Understood. So yeah, so I think the key to think about is I think one of the things is pretty apparent to me, right? I think the industry is shifting over, right? From thinking about vulnerabilities and weaknesses to a risk, right? When you talk about risk, now you're all of a sudden you're talking about what is your critical asset and what is an impact to the asset and what could go wrong with the asset, right? Attack simulation, or what is the threat that might be motivating, right? Rather than saying, oh, this is a highly severe critical vulnerability, I got to go tackle it, right? No. That's one dimension, right? Let's bring that in. Let's understand from when we say we're shifting to a risk-centric approach, that's exactly what we're talking about, right? Like everything is critical, guys, but what's it going to matter, right? So
Yeah, and just to
go
just
ahead.
to add to your point, Karthik, like cyber and business context is very important to risk, because like when you talk to folks in information security, they're going to come up with all sorts of risk. But as a business person, like I'm a business person. I'm sitting in a conference room. Someone comes and explains, okay, this is a top risk. I'm going to ask him, like, what is it impacting to my business? What's the context of these vulnerabilities trying to add risk to my business portfolio? Am I losing my market revenue? Is my shares going to take a hit? Am I going to be in the news? Like you got to explain the significance of these risks to a business person with business context. So when cyber risks is married with business context, it makes sense to the lot of executives and the board of directors.
Right.
There's
So
just too many.
impact analysis, right? Impact analysis, resulting consequences, right? Go ahead, Paulo. Yeah.
Sorry about that. There's just too many risks that we need to be able to prioritize them. And ideally, if you could like put a dollar value to those risks, then that would be great. And
Right. That's fantastic, right? I think we touched on bias in the past, right? I think one of the benefit of having any of your tools should, you need to be able to say whether that tool or that capability is solving its purpose, right? So I think, and doesn't have any other bias into it, right? Sometimes when you bundle a lot of things together, it kind of creates that bias, right? Because obviously, one should feed or one should support the other areas, right? So having an independent layer as you start to create this program, is also critically important, right? Like that independence layer can feed in your asset criticality and asset value or asset impact, to your point, and your threats that are coming into that mixture, right? Is it even important? Is there an attack going to happen? If it were to attack happen, what would happen, right? So that threat landscape coming into play, the business context landscape, impact to that business, it coming into the play, and then the cyber deficiency landscape coming into play have to come together to be able to say, well, now I have a chemical reaction, because I have all these three components coming into play, and now I can go tackle that, right? So fantastic. I think we're having a great conversation. I appreciate your time. I'm going to keep us moving down, right? What are some of your recommendations to a successful risk management program? Want to start? Dheeraj? I think.
I think the most important part is actually, I always say this, that you cannot fix what you cannot measure. So I think measuring and creating like a scorecard system in your organization is the starting point, where you can say these are some elements: cyber threat detection, incident response, protection, and then create a concept of scoring. That how is it? Are you effective? Are you in the development mode? Are you maturing? Are you optimized? And create a scoring system on multiple dimensions of your security landscape. And then actually, and it's okay to say that, hey, in some areas my score will not be as good because this is not a performance review. It's just being, it's giving you a true reflection of where you are. And that scorecard or that metric system will allow and motivate teams and organizations to actually put in energy on areas which are absolute must have or which must be solved yesterday. So I think creating like a very data driven scoring system is a starting point which will help organizations to say that where we are today and what is our North Star.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I think, Mithun, do you want to add?
Yeah, so I kind of echo that, like, because, Dheeraj absolutely pointed, like, you can't report what you can't measure. So scoring system is pretty much important. And these scoring system can be unpacked in terms of risk and standards and compliance. Like you have standards, you have information security standards, and then you have compliance. And not complying to set of policies and standards is going to generate a risk. So I think every organization will have like a custom risk scoring algorithm. I think they'll take the baseline from the industry, but every organization is different because of its the way they function. So they take that custom algorithms of risk and try to sit with audit committees, risk committees, cyber committees as to how do we represent the risk to the board of directors and the presidents. So I think we got to come up with that methodology because cyber always has metrics to show, and we can measure it, we can report it, but again, like how the organization is reacting to it definitely needs to come up with a standard and compliance measuring scorecard that Dheeraj was referring to.
Fantastic. I think I got some notes I've been writing down, and I'm going to go to Paula. Like to add on to that, like, what are those pieces?
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, we need to also track how successful we are in remediating these risks, right?
Yeah.
Because if we're only reporting things and not actually closing them, then it's going to be all for naught. So how much are teams getting and patching these vulnerabilities or fixing these problems? Or are we able to create compensating controls so that we kind of mitigate those risks? That's something that we have to continuously report to the board, and I think it's a absolutely crucial portion of that conversation.
No, fantastic, Paulo. I think I picked up 3 different themes in it, and I completely understand and agree with you all, and it resonates totally with me. While I do that, just to the audience, if you have any questions that you'd like to have the panelists, ask the panelists, please type it into the chat. I think Jeremy is watching the chat for us, so we have a few more minutes. We'll take some of the questions. While you're typing those questions, I think I picked up 3 things, right? One, I think what from Dheeraj he said, you need to have visibility. You need to know what's actually going on, right? You need to have that lens and landscape, right? And I think from Mithun, what I also picked up was communication, reporting, establishing a metric and a measure, right? So I think you need to you need to be able to measure it. You need to have visibility. You need to be able to communicate so that something can be done. And I think what Paula, you said is how do you manage it, right? So how do you remediate? How do you mitigate it? Right? So I think for a successful risk management program, you need to have an independent platform that helps you these pieces coming together, right? Visibility is important, establishing a threshold and a tolerance level, then communicating that so that your board members, your peers, the people, the development community is able to do and fix it, right? And then the third component is, okay, fine, that's great, but how are we going to manage it, right? So visibility, communication, and management is important. That takes into account all your assets, all your threats, and all your findings and weaknesses, right? So to me, those are the 3 ingredients coming into this mix, and we need to be able to get into it and then do the magic and get these 3 things out, right? So which is awesome and fantastic, right? So while I'm Jeremy, I think we're getting some questions. If not, please go ahead and ask some other questions. While those questions are coming in, I do have a couple of poll questions that I would like to run. I think that would be awesome to understand how your peer network is thinking in those directions as well, right? So let's go ahead and run the question in parallel while you're typing away your questions that you would like to ask on the panelists.
Yeah. So there is a question here. It says, it's from Scott Collins. It says, what changes have been experienced in the application security attacks in the age of AI? Have they become more sophisticated in any way? Are attackers upscaling their operational capability?
Okay, you guys go
I'll
ahead,
take
Dheeraj.
that.
Yeah.
I think the answer to that question is, in short, yes, the attackers have become more sophisticated because with the advent of modern AI tools, the ability to learn these tools, implement them, and create a very quick simulation attack is much faster than what it used to be. So that's a high risk area. The opportunity here is that at the same time, so are the security tools. So at the same time, the ability for organization to embrace these AI tools is the panacea today. I mean, if that's the order of the day, if you're left behind in not modernizing your technology stack in security tools, you will definitely be at risk. So the name of the game is stay two steps ahead of the malicious actors, so that you're making sure that your organization, your data, your confidentiality is more secure. So I think that's mostly the name of the game. The irony is that, as always, people say that the malicious actor has to be wrong, has to be wrong once. We have to be right 100% of the times. So there's that dilemma that we just have to make. We cannot afford to make any mistake. They just their job is to get an open door once. So that's where this entire security game is, where we just have to stay much ahead, much faster, much more nimble in modernizing our security tools and staying ahead of the curve.
I'll jump in there. So yeah, there's absolutely new Gen AI tools that can autonomously attack targets, right? It can take the output of your traditional tools like Nmap and do the next step, right? So yeah, absolutely. This is something that I've been researching as well and want to incorporate in my own defenses because attackers are definitely going to be doing this, and with their tools could be leveraged in a defensive manner as well.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I have a different optics to it. Obviously we have these automated tools for detection, and they're programmed and sequenced in certain shape or fashion. But in addition to that, you something have called as business logic. So if you're talking about like application security, you obviously do the business logic, and that's where your penetration tests come into visibility. And the same thing applies for AI as well. You can arm all your test methodologies with the shape of tools, but understanding the business logic where the deficiencies exist is also of supreme prime importance, because I think gone are those days like where we straightforward detect tools and start reporting findings. It's not going to make sense unless and until you mix that with business logic.
I think you're muted, Karthik.
Yeah, I got it unmuted. Yep, and I got this. How would you rate your organization's current approach to risk-centric cybersecurity programs? I'm glad to see that nobody is saying we're just getting started, which is for a security professional, that's a good thing, right? 50% are saying developing and 20% are saying in a very advanced state. I would have started to see a lot more in the somewhat advanced state than in the developing state, but but prioritization takes time, right? So it's just still an interesting data point for you to be able to think about it when you talk to your peers and when you go back into your organization, right? As we get more questions, I'm going to stop this and I'm going to launch another poll. And then, while I launch the another poll, let me launch the other poll as well. I think we still have about 30 participants, so hopefully everybody can chime in. What is your organization's primary focus for 2025 security priorities, right? Again, we're keeping in the theme of application security and risk management and infrastructure, so please go ahead and punch in your responses. while you do that, and I don't know if I'm hoping a lot of you know about ArmorCode. If not, I'm going to take another next 30 seconds while we're getting some of the questions. ArmorCode is an independent platform, independent governance layer platform for AI-powered platform for ASPM and risk-based vulnerability management, right? So we're here to talk about security posture management for any companies. So we don't have any scanning tools or findings tools, so we ingest about 250 different integrations we have, and then we ingest findings and capabilities from that, and then we have threat intel and exploitability feeds coming into it. We take in the asset criticality, and then produce visibility in terms of what are the risks that you need to be able to taken care of, and we provide reports and dashboards and workflow management, and almost getting into an automated remediation state, so which is where the communication comes into play and into the management layer as well. So that's ArmorCode. Please look it up if you have any questions, and also happy to have a conversation offline on that topic. Well, while I gave you that, the third, I think the next question that's coming in is, what, if any, security related dialogue has DeepSeek news as triggered within your security organization? That's kind of interesting. Early days from a DeepSeek perspective. I'm not sure if it's going to be any different than any other generative AI conversation you're having, but love to hear from you guys what you're seeing from your organization.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, like the conversations have started already rolling out, because we use technologies of AI to power it. So quote unquote, I think when it comes to the specific attacks related to DeepSeek, I think it's still being published. There are research information coming out, but the exact attack vectors is still TBD. I know Wiz published yesterday evening a research information related to it, and all the organizations are looking at, okay, what if this happens to our company? How do we protect it? How do we recover? Have you guys identified what data sources are going into AI? So that's why we've started that dialogue. So it's too early, it's too premature. But again, when it comes to having these conversations with app and product teams, we've prioritized these conversations, at least at my end, is what I would recommend.
So definitely there is a lot of awareness and questions both from a practitioner perspective as well as a management perspective, right? So that's great, right? I think this third poll question is a multiple choice question. I think I'm going to stop that for now. If anybody else needs to get in quickly, you can do that. Okay, let me do that, and then let me share the results. It's interesting, right? I see about 2/3 of the people who are participating or saying enhancing their risk management program is a priority for 2025. Adopting AI-driven tools and technologies is about almost half of them, right? So, scaling cybersecurity programs across decentralized environment, that's also a lot of people are doing it. So I think it's kind of a multitude of things that's kind of happening, right? These are the things that we're starting to constantly hear from our customers. Henceforth, these are the choices. I'm sure there's 20 other things that companies are probably doing it. So enhancing a risk management program is, on the top of the list, and improving cloud and DevOps security is also important. And good. All right, we do have a few more. I think I shared. Okay, I'm going to stop this. We do have a few more minutes. Any other questions coming in, Raj? Are you keeping an eye on it, or any questions from any of the attendees or participants?
I'd like to answer the DeepSeek question, actually.
Yeah, go ahead, Paula. That's a good question. I think there's a lot of questions in everybody's mind, right? So go ahead, Paula.
Yeah, I mean, the conversation is, do we host it ourselves, right? DeepSeek is an open model. You can rent, some cloud that can, where you have the privacy and the security as much as you want. So the question is, do we allow API usage that goes directly to DeepSeek, or do we host it ourselves? And I think that's something a lot of companies will have to consider.
I think the other big thing, which in my opinion, and our company has very, very early days, we've adopted that, is there are three things that we have to be careful, especially with corporate data, is monitor the employees' use of AI tools and making sure that the the security of the accounts, the OAuth scopes, and making sure that the employees are very well educated, not to put any proprietary data on any of these AI tools. And I think, I don't know if you guys know, unlike OpenAI, in DeepSeek, there is no concept of opt-out of data sharing. So that's even more dangerous, where, if you share data, there is no prompt which says, hey, do you want to opt in or opt out? That makes it even more scary. So I think I would highly recommend that, like, while these, people are fascinating, open source is revolutionizing our LLMs, the fact that it was built with $6 million and fast, security must be at the forefront of that. So
Right.
everything that shines is not gold. So be very watchful of what you're using.
Awesome wisdom, Dheeraj, to bring us closer to being closer, right? So I want to take this opportunity. I think I learned a lot, and I think there's a lot of takeaways, right? I think about visibility, communication, and management. Think about managing risk from a business context and sensitivity perspective. Think about shifting left, and think about employing platforms and tools that helps you get there, optimally as we embrace AI, and start to shift your program more risk centric. Or some of the takeaways that I took away from this call, and hopefully you all got a benefit out of it and a value out of it. This recording will be available at this stage. I really like to thank each and every one of you, and would like to transition to Roger. Roger gracefully has been waiting, and thanks for having you, Roger. And go ahead, and I'll let Roger close us out for today's call.
Well, Karthik, I've been listening in, and I got to tell you guys what I really appreciate. We all get bombarded because every company out there has something to sell or do, and researchers, have their part to play. But hearing the three of you that get up and go to work every day and have to make your organization secure, your viewpoints are so useful, and both to your peers. And I know we've got some companies that are on the line, and so understanding what it's like to be in your shoes is phenomenal. And Karthik, of course, your ability to see that viewpoint, many years that you spent in that role. Together, we worked at AT&T, and now the wonderful work you're all doing at ArmorCode. So really, I just want to wrap up with a great, genuine thank you to our panel members, to Karthik and the other folks at ArmorCode that helped pull this together, and mostly to all of you that joined. And so I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and God, just stay on it with the AI threats, because it's gonna be exciting for the next few years. Gainful employment at the very least. All right.
Thank you, Roger and Ballistic. You guys are great, fantastic, and appreciate that. And there are a series of this goes on a monthly basis. So look forward to the future ones. If you've been on this one, you'll definitely get the invite for the next one. And we bring in different topics, during the course of the next year. So again, I want to take an opportunity to thank Dheeraj from NetApp, Paulo from Motley Fool, and Mithun from S&P Global. You guys are fantastic, awesome, and you guys embrace some of the concepts that we at ArmorCode do. So I appreciate that. And then thank you for your time and your thoughts and ideas. Hopefully that's very valuable to everybody who's listening. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.